This is her Retaliation, where stories of heartbreak, betrayal, and justice come to life. If you believe in karma and redemption, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, because every story here has a reckoning. I always believed that retirement was supposed to be peaceful, a time to sit by the window, sip tea, and feel proud of the life you've built. But that illusion shattered the moment my daughter looked at me with disgust and spat those words, "You're only good for your money, old hag." That was the day everything inside me died and something else was born. My name is Margaret Ellis. I'm 64 years old, and for 42 years I worked as a senior accountant at Anderson & Burke Financial Group in Portland, Oregon. I gave everything: my youth, my health, my loyalty, not only to that company but to my family, and yet, on the day I retired, the people I loved most made me feel like a burden. The day began beautifully. I woke up early, ironed my pale blue blouse, and even curled my silver hair, something I hadn't done in years. My daughter, Heather, was supposed to drive me to the office for my farewell lunch. She arrived an hour late, scrolling her phone, chewing gum, not even glancing my way. When I got in the car, she said, "You know, Mom, it's kind of weird that they still throw parties for old employees. Like, what's the point?" I smiled faintly. "It's just a little sen. Doff, 40. 2 years is a long time, honey." "Yeah," she replied, rolling her eyes. 42 years doing the same boring thing. I'd lose my mind. Her words cut deep, but I stayed quiet. That's what I always did. I had spent my whole life avoiding conflict, letting things slide, pretending everything was fine. But that day, something in me noticed how tired I was of being dismissed. At the office, my colleagues were kind cake, speeches, hugs, and a gold framed certificate I'd never hang. But Heather sat in the corner, barely clapping, texting on her phone. When it was over, she sighed, "Can we go now? I've got dinner plans." We drove home in silence. My house felt emptier than ever. My husband, Richard, passed away 6 years ago. Since then, Heather and her husband, Kyle, moved in temporarily to help me around the house. That temporary stay turned into permanent residence, and somehow I became the guest in my own home. They took the master bedroom. They used my car. They had their friends over every weekend, drinking in the living room, leaving dishes for me to clean. That night, after the retirement party, I made dinner. Just something simple: roast chicken, garlic potatoes, a salad. Heather didn't even come downstairs. I overheard her talking to Kyle from the kitchen. "God, she's so sentimental," she said. "She actually cried at that stupid party. I swear she's going to expect us to throw her some emotional dinner or something." Kyle laughed. "You're lucky she's got money. Once she starts giving that inheritance early, we'll finally pay off my car." My hands froze over the counter. I stood there for a moment, holding my breath, every word carving deeper into my chest. Was that all I was to them, a walking wallet? Later that evening, when I asked Heather if she wanted tea, she snapped, "No, Mom. You can relax now, okay, you're retired. Stop hovering." Then she smiled a cruel, mocking smile and said, "You're only good for your money, old hag." I don't even remember walking away. I just remember the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears, the faint laughter coming from upstairs, and the taste of salt when I realized I was crying. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch, watching the streetlights flicker, and thought about how I had spent my entire life giving to a husband, to a daughter, to a job, and no one ever stopped to ask what I wanted. By morning, I had made my decision. If I was only good for my money, then they would soon learn what it's like without it. Over the next few days, I moved quietly, methodically. I contacted my financial advisor, Mr. Langston, and told him I wanted to restructure my assets. He was confused at first. "Mrs. Ellis, are you sure? That means removing Heather from your joint accounts." "Yes," I said calmly, "and I want to close every card under my name connected to her spending. Every card, every single one." The following week, I transferred my funds into a private account under a new trust one Heather knew nothing about. I changed my will too, but that wasn't enough. The house, the one Richard and I built, I decided to sell it. Secretly, I knew a quiet buyer through the firm, and within a month the papers were signed. Heather thought I was just sorting some paperwork. When the day came, I stood in the empty living room, the air smelling faintly of paint and lemon cleaner. I ran my fingers along the walls, remembering laughter, Christmas mornings, Richard's voice. And then I folded a letter, a single note, and placed it on the kitchen counter. It read, "You always said I was only good for my money. I hope now you find out who you are without it." That evening, while they were out, I packed a single suitcase, locked the front door, and walked away. No calls, no goodbyes. I took a cab to the Union Station, bought a one-way ticket to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and disappeared. The air felt lighter there, warm, dry, unfamiliar. For the first time in years, no one expected anything from me. I rented a small adobe house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by quiet hills and sunsets that painted the sky like a dream. But peace has a strange way of feeling hollow when your heart is still bruised. Every night, I'd wonder what they were doing, if they noticed I was gone, if Heather even cared. 2 weeks later, I got my answer. A message appeared on my old phone, the one I had left connected only for emergencies. "Mom, please come home. I'm sorry. We didn't know you'd sell the house. We didn't know you'd actually leave. Please, I need you. Kyle left. I can't do this." I didn't reply. Instead, I looked out the window at the desert sky stars scattered like broken glass and whispered to myself, "You needed to learn what good for my money really meant." And for the first time I felt peace. Not the kind that comes from forgiveness, but the kind that comes from freedom. The next morning, I woke up to the soft hum of cicadas outside my little adobe house in Santa Fe. The sun was just spilling through the thin curtains, painting golden lines across the floor. For the first time in decades, I felt weightless. I made myself coffee strong, black, the way Richard used to drink it, and sat by the small wooden table, watching the desert stretch endlessly beyond the window. Silence, no shouting, no slammed doors, no footsteps demanding something from me. Just peace. But peace has a sound, and it's quiet enough that sometimes guilt finds its way in. I kept replaying that night in my mind. The way Heather's lips curled into that smirk, the way her voice dripped with disdain. I wondered if she'd even noticed I was gone. Then I remembered her message, her words from the night before echoed again. "Kyle left. I can't do this." Part of me wanted to respond. The mother in me still wanted to protect her. But another part, the woman who'd been used, ignored, and ridiculed for years, whispered no. Let her live the life she thought she could handle. I deleted the message. 3 weeks passed. I rented the house under my maiden name, Margaret Lane, and found a part-time bookkeeping job at a small art gallery owned by a kind woman named Carmen Alvarez. She didn't ask many questions. She just smiled and said, "You look like someone who's good with numbers and peace." I laughed at that. Good with numbers, yes. Peace not yet. At night, I'd sit outside, listening to the desert winds and the faraway sound of coyotes. I thought about how strange it was to rebuild your life at 64, but I didn't regret leaving, not once, until the letter arrived. It came on a Monday afternoon, forwarded from my old mailing address. A thick white envelope with Heather's handwriting, messy, uneven, desperate. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 2 pages. "Mom, I don't even know where to start. Everything's gone. The house is empty. The new owner said it was sold weeks ago. You never told me. Kyle lost his job, and after he found out about the cards being canceled, he packed up and left. He said I was useless without your money. He was right. I don't know how to live without you. I can't pay the bills. I can't keep up with anything. I know I was cruel. I know what I said hurt you. Please, please just tell me where you are. I need you, Mom. I really do. Heather." I set the letter down and stared at it for a long time. My daughter, the same girl who once called me an old hag, was now broken, alone, abandoned. Part of me felt satisfaction, a quiet sense of justice, but another part of me, it hurt. Because no matter how cruel she had been, she was still the child I once carried in my arms, the one who used to braid my hair and fall asleep on my chest after bad dreams. I whispered to the empty room, "You're learning, sweetheart. The hard way, but you're learning." Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I called my financial advisor again. "Mr. Langston," I said, "I'd like to set up an anonymous trust one that provides small monthly deposits into a local account for my daughter, but I don't want her to know it's me." He hesitated. "Anonymous, yes," I said firmly, Let her think it's from a relative, a friend, anyone, but not me. And so it began a silent bridge between punishment and compassion. Over the next few months, life in Santa Fe began to bloom. Carmen introduced me to local artists, and I started helping them manage sales and taxes. I even began sketching again, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. Every morning, I walked through the plaza, sipping coffee, greeting shopkeepers who knew me simply as Miss Lane. Nobody knew my story, nobody pitied me, and that anonymity was a gift, but fate has a way of circling back. One afternoon, while helping Carmen organize invoices, a young woman walked into the gallery, tall, pale, and fragile, looking. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying. It took me a second to recognize her. Heather. She froze. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Mom. The room fell silent. Carmen excused herself quietly, leaving us alone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She looked so small, not the arrogant, self-assured daughter I left behind, but a broken girl clinging to the last thread of hope. She walked toward me, trembling. I found you. Someone at the bank told me about the trust. I knew it was you. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout, you had everything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt a wave of sorrow crash through me. Heather, I said softly, why are you here? She broke down completely, her voice cracking. Because I don't know who I am anymore, Mom. You were right. I built my life around money, your money. When it disappeared, so did everyone else. Kyle, my friends, all of them. I thought I could live without you, but I can't. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't my enemy anymore. She was just lost. You hurt me deeply. I said, my voice trembling. You made me feel like I was nothing. I know. She sobbed. I was cruel. I was stupid. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I turned away, trying to steady myself. Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Heather. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of hate. But I'm not sure I'm ready yet. She nodded, wiping her tears. I'll wait. She whispered, I'll do whatever it takes to earn it. And then she left quietly, like she used to when she was grounded as a teenager. That night I sat by the window, tears rolling down my cheeks. I'd wanted her to suffer, and she had. But what I didn't expect was that watching her crumble would hurt me more than the insult ever did. In the weeks that followed, she stayed in Santa Fe. She found a small apartment and started working at a bakery nearby. Sometimes she'd leave fresh pastries at my doorstep with a note that simply said, for Mom. No expectations. Slowly, I began responding. A short message here, a brief coffee meeting there. And just like that, our relationship began to rebuild, not with money, but with understanding. But the story wasn't over. Because one night, while we were having dinner together at a small cafe downtown, Heather looked at me with hesitant eyes and said something that froze my heart. Mom. She whispered, there's something you don't know about Dad's death. Kyle told me before he left, and I think you deserve to know the truth. I stared at her, the fork slipping from my hand. What truth? I asked. She looked down, trembling. It wasn't an accident. It was something else, something Kyle was involved in. The world around me went silent, the air turned cold, and in that moment I realized my story of retirement and revenge had only just begun. The cafe was quiet, except for the faint hum of jazz playing from an old radio. Outside, rain had just started to fall, soft, hesitant drops that tapped against the window like whispers from the past. Heather's face was pale, her hands trembling as she stirred her untouched cup of coffee. My heart was pounding. Heather, I said, barely above a whisper, what are you talking about? What did Kyle tell you? She looked up, her eyes wet with guilt. He said, Dad's accident wasn't just an accident. Kyle was there that night. My breath caught, that can't be. Your father was alone. The police said he lost control on the bridge. Heather shook her head violently. That's what Kyle made everyone believe. The room tilted slightly, the world spinning around me as her words sank in. Start from the beginning. I demanded, my voice sharp. Heather swallowed hard. Kyle told me about it after a fight one night when he was drunk. He said your insurance policies, Dad's life insurance, your house, it was all supposed to set us up for life once you retired. He knew Dad was worried about money and the new investments he'd made. Kyle convinced him to drive out that night to talk about a quick loan deal, something about selling part of your land to his company. I felt my throat close, but Richard didn't trust Kyle. He thought he was careless with money. Heather nodded slowly. Exactly, that's why they argued that night. Kyle said he tried to reason with him, but they ended up fighting near the bridge. He swore it was an accident, that Dad slipped and fell when he tried to leave. But he panicked instead of calling for help. He staged it to look like a car crash. I couldn't breathe. My hands went numb. Heather's voice broke. I didn't believe him at first, but after Dad died, Kyle started pushing me to move in with you. He said it was better to keep an eye on things. Now I know why he wanted control over your money. My entire body trembled with rage. All these years, I had mourned my husband, blamed fate, and buried my pain. But it wasn't fate. It was greed. Kyle killed Richard. I closed my eyes, gripping the table until my knuckles turned white. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was scared, Heather whispered. I thought Kyle would hurt me too, and when you left, everything fell apart. He stopped pretending. He laughed about it once, said your old man was too stupid to fight back. Tears rolled down my face silently. I wasn't just a mother or a widow anymore. I was a woman betrayed twice by the man my daughter married, and by the silence that followed. When we left the cafe, the rain had turned heavier, washing the streets clean. But nothing could wash away what I just learned. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window of my small Santa Fe home, watching lightning flash across the desert sky. And for the first time since I'd vanished, I felt the fire return, the one that had gone cold the day Richard died. I pulled out an old box from the bottom drawer inside were my old work files, numbers, contracts, ledgers, and copies of Richard's life insurance and investment records. I had kept everything, and now they were going to be my weapons. The next morning, I called an old friend, Detective Alan Pierce, a retired investigator from Portland who had handled Richard's case years ago. Alan, it's Margaret Ellis. I said, Margaret, I thought you'd left the state. I did, but I need your help. I think Richard's death wasn't an accident. There was a pause on the line after all these years. I have new information from Heather, she said. Kyle confessed. I heard him exhale slowly. If that's true, Margaret, we can reopen the file, but you'll need evidence. I'll get it. I said, my voice steady as steel. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked quietly, like I used to back at the firm, precise, careful, relentless. Every night, I pieced together transactions Kyle had made using Heather's access to my accounts. I found inconsistencies, money funneled into shell businesses, signed under fake LLC. And there, buried deep in one of Richard's insurance claim files, was a payment made to Kyle Matthews just 3 months after the death disguised as a consulting fee. That was the proof. I forwarded everything to Detective Pierce. Within a week, he called back. Margaret, we've got him. Kyle's company records matched the transactions. He was involved in financial fraud, and now with this evidence, we can tie him to Richard's death. I closed my eyes, a tear slipping down my cheek. Thank you, Alan. He hesitated. There's one more thing. We found that he's been staying in Phoenix. We'll issue the warrant tomorrow. The next day, Heather came to see me. Her eyes were red, but there was a strange calm in her expression. I heard, she said quietly, they're arresting him. I nodded. Justice takes time, but it comes. She started crying again. Mom, I don't know how to thank you. I don't deserve. I reached out and held her hand. Stop saying that. You made mistakes, Heather. So did I. But we're still here. We can rebuild. She sobbed, and I let her. For the first time in years, I held her the way I used to, the way a mother holds a child, not to protect her from the world, but to remind her that love can survive even through hate. When Kyle was arrested, the news spread quickly. Local papers picked it up. Former Portland businessman charged in suspicious death of accountant. The world finally knew the truth, but for me, revenge wasn't about headlines, it was about closure. One evening, a few days after the arrest, I visited the old bridge where Richard had died. The sky was glowing orange with the setting sun. I placed a small bouquet of daisies, his favorite, near the railing. I did it, Richard. I whispered, you can rest now. The wind was soft that evening, brushing against my face like a hand I'd known all my life. When I returned home, Heather was waiting outside, holding a small box. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled weakly. "Dad's old watch. You gave it to Kyle after the funeral, remember? The police found it in his safe. I thought you should have it back." I took the watch in my hands, feeling its familiar weight, its quiet ticking. Time, the one thing I thought I'd lost, was still moving forward. That night, I sat on the porch again, the stars scattered like tiny promises above me. Heather came and sat beside me. We didn't speak for a long time. Then she said softly, "You know, Mom, maybe this is what retirement was supposed to look like. Not peace at the beginning, but peace at the end." I smiled faintly. "Maybe you're right." For a long while, we just sat there, mother and daughter, no money between them, no resentment, just silence and healing. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running anymore. I had vanished once to find peace, and returned to find justice, because sometimes retaliation isn't about revenge. It's about finally remembering who you are when the world forgets. The morning sun spilled through the curtains of my little house in Santa Fe, lighting the room in shades of gold. The world outside was waking up, vendors setting up their carts, children laughing on their way to school, the smell of freshly baked bread drifting in from the cafe nearby. For the first time in so many years, I woke up without dread. No expectations, no responsibilities, just life. Heather was making breakfast in the kitchen, something I never imagined I'd see again. She wore an old apron, humming a tune I used to sing to her when she was little. The same tune she had long forgotten. Or maybe she hadn't. "Morning," I said softly. She turned, smiled faintly. "Coffee's ready, strong, just how you like it." It was such an ordinary moment, and yet it felt extraordinary. The kind of peace that comes only after a storm. We sat together, sipping our coffee. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was no longer heavy. It was gentle now, healing. Heather finally broke it. "They called from Portland yesterday. The trial's scheduled for next month." I nodded slowly. "Did they tell you if he's—" Confessed, her voice cracked. "He did, said he didn't mean to push Dad, that it just happened. But he admitted to everything else, the fraud, the money. They said he's facing over 20 years. I exhaled, closing my eyes. "Justice," I murmured. "And not revenge, just justice." Heather looked down. "You should testify, Mom. They want your statement." I shook my head gently. "No, I've said everything that needed to be said. I've already spent too many years reliving that night. Now I just want to live the years I have left." She didn't argue. She just reached across the table and took my hand, something she hadn't done since she was a child. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me." I smiled faintly. "I almost did, but your father wouldn't have wanted that. He believed in second chances even when we didn't deserve them." We spent that day walking through the market in town, the smell of roasted corn and chili peppers filling the air, the chatter of vendors calling out prices. Heather laughed for the first time in years, a sound that brought tears to my eyes. We stopped by a small art stall. There was a painting of a woman standing at the edge of a desert cliff, wind in her hair, suitcase beside her, the horizon wide open ahead. Heather stared at it for a long moment. "That's you," she said softly. I smiled. "Maybe it's all of us, standing on the edge, deciding who will be next." She bought the painting with the little money she had left and insisted on hanging it in my living room. That evening, after dinner, I sat by the window again, the same spot where I used to wonder what my family was doing without me. Now, my daughter sat on the couch behind me, reading. The sound of pages turning, the faint laughter from a nearby house, the soft ticking of Richard's watch beside me, all of it blended into something I hadn't felt in years. Contentment. "Mom," Heather said suddenly, "I've been thinking. I want to go back to school, maybe study accounting. I want to start over, for real this time." I turned to her, smiling. "You should. You're smart, Heather. You always were." She laughed quietly. "I was also selfish. You were young," I said gently, "and sometimes youth doesn't know the value of what it has until it loses it." We fell into silence again, both of us knowing that was true for her and for me. Weeks passed, the trial came and went. Kyle was sentenced to 23 years in prison. The news made headlines for a week, then disappeared like most stories do, but we didn't care. We had our own story to finish. Heather found a job at the same gallery where I worked with Carmen. She was shy at first, nervous, but Carmen took her under her wing. Together they ran art shows, managed accounts, and soon enough, Heather was smiling again, genuinely smiling. One evening, Carmen pulled me aside. "You know, Margaret, I've never seen someone change like your daughter. You must be proud." I looked across the room at Heather, laughing with a customer, her hair shining in the soft light. "I am," I said quietly, "more than she'll ever know." That night I sat alone under the stars, thinking of Richard, of the life we built, the lessons I learned too late, and the forgiveness I never thought I'd find. I took out a notebook and began to write, not for anyone else, but for me. Forgiveness is not weakness. It's remembering your worth after the world has tried to take it away. Love, no matter how broken, can still heal if you let it. And sometimes disappearing isn't running away. It's the only way to be found again. When I finished, I closed the notebook, placed it beside the watch, and whispered, "Good night, Richard." A few months later, Heather surprised me again. "Mom," she said one afternoon, walking into the house with excitement in her eyes, "I've been saving up. There's this little place, a cottage on the edge of town. I want to buy it for us." I laughed softly. "Heather, I don't need," she shook her head, smiling. "I know, but I want to. You've given me enough second chances. Let me give you a home this time." And so we moved a small white cottage with lavender bushes out front, wind chimes on the porch, and sunlight that poured through every window. Every morning, Heather made breakfast. Every evening, we sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The world had gone full circle. One night, as the sky turned pink and gold, Heather whispered, "You know what I realized, Mom, the note you left that day? It didn't just make me cry. It made me see who I was and who I didn't want to be." I smiled softly. Sometimes words hurt because they're true, but they can heal too if you're brave enough to face them. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You're my hero." I chuckled, brushing her hair gently. "No, sweetheart, I'm just your mother." We stayed like that, quiet, breathing in the warm desert air, the stars beginning to bloom above us. And as the night deepened, I realized something. I had finally retired. Not from work, not from motherhood, but from pain, because I'd learned that the most powerful retaliation in life isn't revenge, it's rebuilding your peace where they tried to destroy it. The world may remember me as the woman who vanished, but my daughter will remember me as the woman who came back stronger, and that's all that ever mattered.